You ever been so cold your bones rattle like glass? That's how it felt. Barefoot, soaked to skin, wrapped in a dripping fleece blanket with a flashlight clenched between my teeth when I said the words out loud. You cut off my power during a storm? The wind nearly swallowed my voice, but Karen from the HOA heard me just fine. She was standing there on her porch, bone dry, sipping cocoa like it was a ski resort. Her house looked like a Christmas card. Every light warm and glowing, porch heater humming, security lamps sparkling through the rain. Rules are rules, she said with a smile that could slice glass. That's when I made the decision. No more warnings. No more second chances. If she wanted to play with the grid, she was about to find out who built it. The storm had rolled in slow, thunder low and steady, soaking the pavement until a whole street flickered awake with porch lights and sensor-activated glow. Except mine. Mine turned on and then flickered out. Whole house went dark. No power, no heat, thermostat dead. Security system let out a final chirp before going silent. And worst of all, the fridge. I'd just spent over $500 stocking it. And yet every other house on the block, fully powered. AC's running. TVs glowing behind curtains. Dave's inflatable flamingo still flapping like a maniac. Only my house was dark and cold. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever dealt with an HOA like this. Because I'm about to show you what happens when petty power plays go too far, and someone pushes the wrong guy. At first, I figured it had to be a glitch, maybe a trip breaker or a sensor hiccup. Nothing serious. I walked out into the storm, blinking against the rain, expecting to see a full neighborhood outage. But nope. Every house except mine glowed like nothing was wrong. My place looked abandoned. So I went back inside, grabbed my phone, and tried rebooting the system from the app. Error. Tried logging into my utility dashboard. Blocked. At the bottom of the screen, a new message appeared. Bright red. Power service suspended due to HOA violation. Contact HOA administrator. I just stood there, staring at those words. The HOA? Since when did they have authority over my power? Then came the knock, sharp, deliberate, echoing off the wet metal gate. I pulled on a coat, flashlight in hand, and sloshed outside. Taped to my gate, sealed in plastic, was a violation notice. Bright orange. Karen's signature at the bottom, underlined 3 times. The offense? Unauthorized generator use. HO code 8B7. Immediate disconnection mandated. I laughed, out loud, because I didn't have a generator running. The storm hadn't knocked out power. They had, on purpose. My solar backup system hadn't even engaged yet. It was in standby, like it was supposed to be. And that was the catch. Technically, the grid hadn't failed. It had been cut, preemptively, under the flimsiest clause imaginable. I marched through puddles to Karen's porch, heart pounding, soaked down to my socks. She stood behind her glass door like I was a dog scratching at it. Finally, she opened it and tilted her head like I was the crazy one. "Karen," I said, steam rising from my breath, "you cut my power?" She didn't even flinch. "No," she said sweetly. "The HOA did." She said it like she was doing me a favor, like I should thank her for freezing my house. "Your solar backup was flagged as non-compliant," she went on, sipping her cocoa like this was a fireside chat. "Grid-tied systems aren't allowed to auto-engage without HOA review. It's in the bylaws." My backup wasn't even on. I snapped. "And even if it was, you don't have the authority to touch residential power." She smiled like that was the punchline. "Well, maybe we don't, but we did. And if you want it back, you'll have to submit a compliance review, pay the fine, and wait for board approval. You know the drill." Then she turned away, already halfway back into her glowing living room like the conversation was over. I just stood there, soaked, freezing, staring past her at the soft yellow light flooding her house. You could hear the jazz playing through her open window, see the steam rising from her mug, and something in me clicked. Not anger, not desperation, just precision. I turned around mid-sentence and walked away. Let her think she'd won. Let her get comfy on her throne. Because what she didn't know, what nobody in that HOA knew, was that I wasn't just another name on her little spreadsheet. She thought I was a guy with a house, a nuisance with a solar setup. She didn't know I was the CEO of the regional utility company, the one that powered her porch lights, the one that controlled every meter, every backup circuit, every emergency override across 47 communities, including hers. And the only reason she was able to cut my power was because she exploited an old clause that hadn't been updated since our third merger. That was on me, but not for long. Back inside, I made my way to utility room, past the kitchen, down the hall, behind a biometric lock that required both thumb and retinal scan. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, a dozen monitors blinked to life, casting a faint blue glow across the room. Status dashboards, live feeds, diagnostic tools, and one central control panel at the end of the row that said, simply, "Welcome, Administrator." Karen had no idea who she was messing with. I got to work. Fast. First, I pulled the logs. Found the disconnect request. Timestamped. 3 hours earlier. Initiated from the HOA's private admin portal. She called in, used outdated credentials, and convinced a junior tech, probably some poor new hire, that she had the authority to issue a manual disconnection. The kid saw the HOA flag, panicked, and greenlit it. A fluke. A 1 in a million alignment of incompetence and Karen's weaponized self-importance. She thought she was untouchable. Thought she'd slipped past the cracks. She was wrong. I hovered my fingers over the keyboard. I could have restored my power right then, reversed the override, dismissed the violation, and gone back to normal. But this wasn't about lights anymore. It wasn't about heat. It was about showing people like Karen what happens when you mistake access for ownership. So I didn't flip the switch. I opened a new folder instead, titled it HOA Sector 19B, Compliance Audit. Pulled the call logs. Archived the security footage of her delivering that violation slip in the rain. Cross-referenced it with every HOA board meeting where she'd mentioned power control. Because what she did, it wasn't just petty. It was illegal. She'd manually interfered with regulated grid infrastructure. I hit send on one message to our compliance team. Begin silent audit. Focus. Unauthorized admin overrides. Sector 19B. Then I cracked open a soda and watched the storm roll on. I woke up the next morning in a cold house. Power still off. By choice. Let it sit dark. Let it be a monument to her arrogance. If Karen wanted a power struggle, I'd give her one. But mine wouldn't come with warning slips or fake bylaws. Mine would come like quiet thunder. No sound, no mercy, just a slow tightening of a net she didn't even know she was caught in. I showered with old-school water heating, ate cereal by the gray light bleeding through blinds, and got on the phone. Not to the HOA, not to Karen, to my people, my departments, quiet internal channels. One by one, by mid-morning, 2 compliance officers were deep into Sector 19 BS data, flagging every irregularity from the past 6 months. I issued a QA watch on the entire neighborhood, which meant every spike, outage, or manual override now got logged in a red file. They wouldn't see it. Not yet, but soon, they'd feel it. Then came the alerts. The clubhouse had an illegal hot tub rigged to bypass surge protection. Karen's cousin, Unit 8, was pulling more juice than a strip mall, thanks to his crypto mining rig in the basement. Underground cable, wired directly into the HOA office. Unauthorized. Dangerous. And the best part? Half the neighborhood smart meters had been swapped for non-compliant models, all under Karen's signature. She wasn't running an HOA. She was running her own grid. And badly. That afternoon, an email pinged in, monthly HOA board meeting invite. Normally I'd delete it. But this time, I RSVP'd, yes. Sort of. I sent my friend Nolan instead, retired Navy, encyclopedic memory, perfect poker face. I'd stay behind the curtain, feeding him lines through an earpiece while watching everything through a drone circling the clubhouse. Karen had no idea, but the lights were about to shift. The meeting started like any other HOA circus, metal chairs, burnt coffee, and that flickering fluorescent buzz that made everyone look 10 years older. Karen stood at the front like she was hosting a TED Talk, waving her printouts and announcing new safety protocols for storm events. Translation? She wanted power to selectively cut people off. Nolan raised his hand, calm and casual. Do these rules apply to everyone or just the people Karen doesn't like? Karen's smile twitched. The rules, she said tightly, are applied equally across all units. Great. Nolan nodded, pulling out a manila folder. Because according to the HOA charter, utility control must be handled by licensed professionals. Yet here are timestamps showing unauthorized disconnections, including one to residents of the CEO of the company that powers this neighborhood. She froze. Actually froze. Nolan kept going, cheerful as ever, listing power consumption logs from the clubhouse, emails authorizing unpermitted changes, and the reclassification I triggered that morning, marking the neighborhood as a conditional use zone. That meant higher scrutiny and new rates. And as of 8 a.m., he said, smiling, your neighborhood's rate structure has changed. You'll receive your new billing summary by Monday. You could hear the silence settle like fog. Karen blinked. You can't do that. That's illegal. Nolan smiled wider. Not when the company running your power infrastructure finds calls to audit usage patterns. That's called policy enforcement. Someone in the back mumbled, wait, the CO lives here? Another, you cut his power? A woman stood up. My freezer thawed last night. You owe me a roast. Karen tried to regain control, but it was over. People were pissed. Her mask cracked. She ended the meeting early and stormed out. Meanwhile, I sent the first bill to her inbox. Triple rates. Backdated. With penalties. By the next morning, Karen had gone from smug tyrant to full-on damage control. The HOA group chat, yes, the same one I had full access to, was melting down. People were furious. One woman posted a photo of her spoiled meat. Another threatened to sue the board. Someone even screenshotted the rate increase and captioned it, Karen tax? She tried to calm them down. Claimed it was a clerical error. Said she had it under control. Bad move. That same afternoon, Edgar, retired judge, rarely left his porch, walked into the clubhouse with a printout in hand. I'd seen it all through the drone feed. He didn't yell, didn't posture, just asked her, in front of 24 residents, if she had any legal documentation granting her authority to override grid access during a weather event. She didn't. That night, she held a closed-door emergency board meeting. Thought she could fix it quietly. What she didn't know, we'd baited her. The tech she reached out to, some poor guy she tried to bribe with a wine bottle and an Amazon gift card, was one of our compliance operatives. We'd been waiting for her to make a move like that. The whole conversation was recorded, and by morning, it was in every inbox in the HOA. Footage, audio, Karen's voice unmistakable. It's not tampering if nobody reports it. Neighbors started texting each other screenshots. One guy made a meme. Another changed his Wi-Fi name to Step Away Karen. But I wasn't done. That Friday at 8 p.m., I scheduled a temporary audit blackout. 3 locations only. Karen's house, her cousin's crypto cave, and the HOA clubhouse. The rest of the block lit up like Times Square. She was in the middle of a live stream podcast about community resilience when her power cut mid-sentence. The candlelight scramble? Priceless. The blackout lit a fuse. By Saturday morning, a group of residents called an emergency meeting at the clubhouse, this time without Karen's blessing. She tried to cancel it, claimed harassment, said she was being targeted. But nobody was buying it anymore. The people were done. The room was packed, folding chairs filled, neighbors standing against the walls, arms crossed, waiting. Karen walked in late, sunglasses on like she was dodging paparazzi. But she couldn't dodge what was coming. First, a woman stood up and said, I didn't vote for a dictator. Then another yelled, you owe me 3 lasagnas. They melted. Twice. Laughter rolled through the room. Nervous, but real. But the kill shot? That came from Unit 12. Middle-aged guy, quiet type. He pulled out the HOA charter and calmly read the clause aloud, the one that allowed for the immediate removal of a board member found to be acting beyond their authority. And here's the kicker. Only dues-paying members with active utility accounts could vote. Karen? Due to the meter tampering. Her account was suspended pending review. She couldn't vote. Neither could her little circle of power-hungry enablers. The vote wasn't close. It was a landslide. 15 minutes later, she was out, replaced by Doy, a soft-spoken grandmother who brought oatmeal cookies to the meeting and said, "Let's just calm things down." People clapped. Some hugged. Someone played a recording of Karen's infamous line, "It's not tampering if nobody reports it." The whole room howled. And Karen? She stood there with her mouth open, grasping for a comeback that never came. She stormed out with nothing but her purse and pride, and even that was slipping. The power didn't flicker once. Later that night, I approved a formal cease and desist letter from our legal department. Every infraction, every violation, lined up in order. Next step? Rebuild. Without her, Karen didn't go quietly. People like her never do. While most ousted HOA presidents would sulk, maybe move to a different neighborhood where nobody knew their name, Karen went full sabotage mode. Rumors started swirling. She was plotting a comeback, not through policy this time, but through the grid itself. That's when I heard about Kyle, supposed tech prodigy. 20-something dropout with a laptop covered in anime stickers and a superiority complex. She brought him in under the radar, calling him her nephew. Like that explained the surveillance van parked outside her house. He started nosing around utility boxes, walking the neighborhood like he owned the schematics. I watched him sweet-talk the maintenance guy into unlocking the old HOA shed. What Kyle didn't know, the entire neighborhood was now under passive surveillance. Every pole, every meter, every conduit, wired with tamper alerts and motion triggers. He was on camera the second he stepped near that fuse panel. 3 days later, Kyle made his move. He popped the conduit open behind Karen's house, the one flagged months ago for crypto siphoning, and bam, red lights blinked on the pole. A softum filled the air. Then my favorite part, the drone. We'd modified it to look like a wildlife monitor. But when activated, it dropped low, speaker kicking in with a robotic monotone. Unauthorized access detected. Step away from the conduit. Kyle dropped his screwdriver like it was radioactive and bolted, slipping in the mud and landing hard. Karen, watching from her back porch where the box rose, screamed like she'd seen a ghost. I clipped the footage, added a title, Karen and Kyle versus a grid, and anonymously sent it to every resident. Within hours, it was all over neighborhood socials. Memes, remixes, reaction GIFs. Karen was officially a local legend for all the wrong reasons. The final blow didn't come from me. Not directly. After the drone video went viral, Karen tried to spin it, said it was a security drill, that she was testing the system. Nobody bought it. Not when the whole neighborhood had already seen her scream and run like she'd summoned a demon. The media picked it up. A local news segment titled, "When HOA Power Trips Go Off the Rails." Blurry footage of Karen yelling at the sky, Kyle shielding himself with a pizza box, and then Karen in an interview saying, "There's a shadow grid conspiracy out to silence me." The anchor deadpanned. "You mean the company that provides your electricity?" She nodded like she cracked the case. From there, it unraveled fast. Her house became the neighborhood punchline. One guy put up a cardboard drone in his yard with a sign that read, "Karen detection mode on." A bakery downtown sold cupcakes with tiny plastic propellers on top, called them grid bites. Meanwhile, my legal team filed the big one, a cease and desist from our federal compliance liaison, Department of Energy seal, full audit language, not a criminal charge yet, but it was a warning shot from 20 floors up. She fainted at the mailbox. A neighbor filmed it, uploaded it. Caption, "The power has left the building." At the next HOA meeting, her last remaining ally, some guy named Leo, tried to overturn her removal. The crowd booed him before he could finish his sentence. Someone tossed a flashlight at his feet and said, "In case Karen cuts yours next." Doy, our new president, kept things simple. She canceled all pending fines, paused enforcement policies, and opened talks with my company to create real utility oversight. She even invited me in person. I declined. Instead, I sent Nolan, with pastries, and a handwritten card that said, "May your circuits be ever stable."